Hello and welcome to yet another tutorial from Way Studios, and this one I would call a supplementary tutorial. Basically, it's an in-between. Basically, it's what I talked about earlier in the previous tutorial, which I said I was going to create. I was going to show you how to create your walls using other methods apart from the AEC walls. And right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use splines to create your walls. We'll use splines and extrude and a couple of features and all that. So we still have the same design we used with the floor plans, just as so we've imported from AutoCAD. Now what we'll do is we'll go to our top viewport, and first thing we'll do is we're going to create the outer walls, which are the bounding walls, basically the outer walls. And the method we're going to use is quite very simple. So let's pick, we're using splines. We'll come to our spline area, shapes, then we'll come to splines and we choose our lines, and of course we'll turn on our snap. And I would advise you use 2D snap initially for this, because there are some drawings that of course have some 3D objects in it and you don't want to snap into a Z axis which is above 0 units. Okay, so right now what we're going to do is start now with my snap selected. I've chosen to use line to create my walls. So first I'm going to start with the bounding line walls. So start right here and we'll start creating. We'll pick the outer areas of the wall, and you say, of course, you say close spline, then you right click to exit, and of course you have that as it is. And if you don't get to see it, you can always zoom it and see what it has. So, and of course we've frozen this particular drawing, the AutoCAD drawing we imported. We've frozen that, so you obviously can't select. The only thing you can select right now is your line that you've created. So now, as we're in our top viewport, what we're going to do is we want to have the exterior of this wall have its own thickness. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to use a feature with splines, basically, because this is showing as line as well, and it's of course the same thing as an editable spline, and that's how it comes as default in Max. Okay, so what we go to the sub-object level, which is the spline, then we select the spline. It has to be a closed spline, basically, to achieve what we want to achieve in a perfect way. So what we now come here to the under geometry the parameters here, geometry, and we choose outline. First thing I do is I pick this outline to know exactly where it's going to offset to. Basically, let's see what we're talking about. We can do it real time by picking this, and you can input your data here. And of course we want our walls to be 225 thick, so we're going to do it real time. Pick the outline, then we now check. You don't want it to go outward, you want it to go inward. So while you look at when you do this, you look at this and you see what figures comes in. So we get it has to be in a minus unit, and so we'll go to we can uncheck this, then we'll now go minus 225. so we have a 225 wall that way. And this is happening such that it can also be adjusted, basically, because this is inverse. So right now you can select this and say reverse. If you reverse this, then the way you'll be doing it will be inside, will be the right way inside. Now you can see it's changed once we click our reverse. These are some basic features with spline and all that, and I think one of these days I would do a very intense tutorial on basic objects, shapes in Max, and understanding them, basically, so you can actually know exactly how these things work and what makes certain things happen this way and what makes some other things happen the other way. So right now we're going to use 225. So if it goes the other way around, you have to undo, then you have to use a minus 225. But for now we've actually flipped that part, so you can say minus 225. If we go minus 225 and it goes outside, you can have as well just go again 225, because that spline is still selected, and once you do that, that goes in. So of course you'd have to delete one of the splines, which we're throwing this away. So we now have that, we now have our spline to make out that bounding wall, the bounding wall. So when we go to our perspective view, and since this is a very good spline and it's closed, of course we have to take note of that. If we want to be sure if it is closed, we can go to our subobject level, any of the subobject level, and see, for you to have a closed spline, you only have one point where it's yellow. That means it's closed. For this inner spline is closed and this outer spline is closed, so it only shows yellow, one yellow spot. If you have multiple yellow spots, like now, let me come to this vertex point and I break this part. If I break this, you see we're not having, you can see that from our spline here, we don't even have one, yellow point, which shows that there's somewhere which is not closed. So what I actually do all the time is, once I have something like this and I'm not sure if it's closed or not, I'll select every vertex, then I'll tell it weld. Once I weld that, you can see it has actually chosen this point, because this was the open loop, and it has chosen this point, and it has chosen it as the yellow point, and it has actually closed it. So we have a closed spline here. So right now what I do is, once we've created our spline this way, what I do is I'll apply an I'll apply an extrude modifier over that. Extrude, you can see it's already giving it thickness, it's already showing like a polygon, and extrude amount of, what amount do we want our wall? I want our wall to be, say, 3000. So it's, now we have our wall, and this is as simple as it can get. Beautiful, and it's a lot more different from the AEC wall, and depending on how you like it, a lot of people have different ways of achieving and how best they can understand whatever they learn. And that's, as for my wife, I think she prefers using the AEC wall, because I think she just sees that everything going on parametrically, and she doesn't have too many problems getting it done. But as for me, I think I prefer using this spline method and a couple of other methods at times. I just get in the mood of whichever one I want to create, basically. Alright, so now we have this, and would still need to create the inner walls the same way, using splines basically. And for the inner walls, most times people just because you just need to create your exterior, and all you need for your exterior is nothing more of the exterior walls, and of course you don't need the interior walls, because the exterior doesn't see the walls inside, except you want to create an animation and it has to go through, and you have to create all the walls individually. Of course we're going to do that right now, but this is done for some people, and they just create the top wall and go ahead with what they have. Okay, now so what we do next is we create the inside walls, and how we do that is a lot more different from this, because you can't, except you are very sure of what you are doing and how you're going to make it work, you can as well just use the same method here and use the outline method to get the thickness of the wall. Okay, let's go. I'll show a couple of ways, and it has to be, you'd see how it works, basically, just for you to understand what works and how everything goes. Okay, you could hide this and go ahead with that, but we would create a new spline basically. So picking a line would come from here, and of course we'll make it 2.5, because now we have a wall, so we don't want it to snap to a point above 0z axis. So now we pick. If you pick certain walls, certain points of the wall, and you insert after that, you can see this, then you now pick your insert. Let's pick this, and your outline, and you do that, and you can see what happens. And so And also we can snap. Okay, this, then we have that wall. Then we can as well just create, then I've shown you this. Now I'm going to show you another method, and of course we would apply our extrude modifier over to this, and you see what happens. It just picks the last command you have from your extrude, which is 3000, and that's what we have right here. You can use that for other walls. Then of course you can as well just come in and start creating the lines manually. I'm using a shortcut to get my, you can use a rectangle basically to get this out, getting this out using a rectangle, and we apply our extrude modifier, and of course you can see that. But we want to close this guy up, so for this rectangle we can come down to this level. Let's delete this, or if you can delete this, fine, you can use this remove modifier stack, or we can as well just come pick this rectangle and apply an edit spline over that, not above this extrude but above, just below the extrude and above the rectangle. So here rectangle has an editable spline parameter, and it has sub-object which you can sub-level, which you can see and use it to modify that. Then we can say remove our snap, then move this guy into this wall, then you can have it, and you can see you have this wall. So we'll go ahead and use another style, which is basically the line method, and the complete line would create everything by ourselves. And let's say turn on our snap, we'll come here, zoom in to make sure we are picking the right point, and let's go down because this is going to just be an opening. Then we can pick this point, this point, this point. You just take good note of all this, and you see there are 1,000,001 ways, whichever works for you. And it says close spline. You can see we've actually drawn our own spline. Which is close. We don't need to do any outline or anything. All we just need to do now is create an extrude modifier, and we have that. So now you can see we have, I've shown you like 3 or 4 different ways to get our spline to work, which is almost the same thing, but it's just using spline, but it's just different techniques to achieving it basically. So right now you can just choose whatever method to get all these things done. So now the next thing to do is we're just going to now by ourselves cut the walls, the holes, the openings. We are going to cut the openings for our windows and doors by ourselves. This time the AECs won't do that parametrically, and so we're going to have to do it ourselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this video, finish this up, then come back with a complete walls and walled plan and all that. Then I'll show you how to create the walls and create the openings by Boolean, and using Boolean method we're cutting the holes through. Okay, now this is it. I've created all the interior walls, and I've actually left it this way without merging everything yet for you to see, because I'd like to show you how to merge all this together using the Boolean method, which I see very good, and how very vast the Boolean can work, and a couple of things you can do with it, and just even beyond this simple modeling, which is in an architecture, which you can do a lot of things with Boolean. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the exterior wall, and I'm going to merge this to all that, and using the Boolean operation, which you can always get here from geometry and the compound object, and which is the pro Boolean. And you can get this from starting from I think max 2010, 9, 10, 11 and 12, and of course I'm 13 and all that when it comes out. Okay, so what we do now is we select the object, then we pick our Boolean. Once we pick our Boolean, you can as well just start picking, but you have to make sure under the parameters here you have to make sure it has to be union or merge. which you can actually use to merge all this together. But you could as well just exit this command, and once you come here you can still see that boolean. So it's not as if when that is done it's gone and all that, but it's still there, and you can continue to add more objects or subtract more objects from it. So what we do now is I pick my start. I first check union and go to start picking, and I can just start picking my walls one by one. So it merges all the walls without, you can see, let's go to our wireframe mode, it merges them without the previous intersections. And because we have this not to touch initially, so I'm undoing that. So I'm going to make sure this is to that point, which is, I'm going to come here and let it go in and fine, and we go there. Then we use our boolean and continue with our boolean operation, because we still have that boolean on this particular object, because it's not on this other one but it's always on the one you applied it to. So we still have it there. We can always go and make sure the union is still on, and go and it merges them all. And now we have that wall as a complete single object, and you see places that where they meet, and if they actually meet each other well, it doesn't form any seam at that point. So right now we're going to start creating. So I'm going to exit that one. Don't forget to do that, because if you have multiple objects in your scene, you could just as well just keep picking and mistakenly booleaning some things that you don't want to boolean from the object. So let's go to our wireframe mode, and I'm going to make this a very short one. I'm going to get out the hole that the window will go into. We'll create a box, and of course we choose our snap. Then this time we can now pick our 3-point snap and snap to that, and we have that by creating a box. We come here to pick box and drag and pick, then drop it there, and we have our box right there. So what we do basically is first let's create just a couple of other boxes to show how we would create the just going to create, I think, okay, and I think one more, and I think that's good. So what we'll do is now we'll move this thing 900, because our windows is 900 from ground to sill to the window sill is going to be 900. So what I do is I right click, and when I right click, you get click this small window, or you just right click this icon here, and you get this move transform dialog. And from here, offset world, not the absolute, because if you have to put it on the absolute, you have to do it's absolute. So you want it to be relative to the present point it is, so you put it here, and we're going to put 900, and moves everything 900 up. Then one other thing I would always advise you do, so you don't get errors in your booleaning, you would need to make this the width of this particular thing just a little bit higher than the original width of the wall, which originally is 225, but we just increase it slightly. It doesn't matter how much you increase it, but it should just get a little above it, and that is what we need. So now we'll let's go to our shaded mode by using the F3 as my shortcut. So what we'll do now is we want to start booleaning. Now this time we don't want to union these guys, we want to subtract them from the wall. So what we pick is subtract, then we now pick start picking, and you can as well just start picking, and you can see that's cut through that hole. So there are other methods actually. You can still modify this boolean, which from here you can, from your drop down from your boolean, pick operands, and if you highlight this operand, you can as well just start picking from here. You can see if you click twice, you get to pick the object. The object is there inside, though you don't see it, but once you start picking, if you take a look at what happens here, initially if you pick, it picks the original object, which is this wall originally, and you pick one more time, it picks the object itself. So from here you can now adjust your parameters. This is a very, very tricky method, but you just have to know what you're doing, and you have to getting used to it basically, and you'd understand how this thing works. So right now we've picked that particular box, and we can increase the height. You can see that, and you can as well increase the width, which on the parameters here is showing as the length. So you can have increase that, and so that's how to Boolean cut it through. Then from there you can actually start adding the same method you use here. It's the same method you use for the doors, which you just create a box. You create a box, and of course, because the door is going to be 2001, you're going to have to make it 2.1 high, and of course, just as said, would make it more than the thickness, more than the original thickness of the wall, so we can actually Boolean well out of it. Then you go back to your, and you pick, and you make sure it subtracts, then you subtract that. So right now we'll see how we place our windows and doors into these openings, almost the same way as you place them while cutting through your AAC walls. And let's just how we do it. We go to Windows, then let's say a fixed window, and of course we turn on our 3-point snap, and we just snap to the spaces, and there, and the same way there. Then the same thing goes for the door equally. You pick your door and pivot, and you just cut that through. Then that is how you can achieve that. So you can play around with it, then see how you can achieve various things, different wall heights, because you just draw the wall with your spline, and give it a different type of extrude, and play around with it. And it's a very good way to work, and this is actually what I use to create my walls. Then of course you can as well just convert this into once you're done and you're sure you're through with that, equally you could still just leave it as it is, but you can as well just convert it into an editable poly or a mesh, and it still comes out as good as it is. And so I guess this comes in useful, and bye for now.